Hello and welcome back to my Factorio 1.0 tutorial Let's Play. I'm Xterminator and thank you for joining me again today. And we have some pretty cool plans, I'm hoping, here. Say I'm hoping because, you know, things don't always go as planned, unfortunately. But hopefully with clearing out the biters like I did, we won't be too rudely interrupted. But the plan for today, well, there's a few plans, really. The main plan is to get some power armor, and maybe, if we're lucky, get a fusion reactor in that power armor. And then on top of that, we do need to do some expansion in our base, our smelting in particular, probably our circuits as well. The circuit expansion, of course, will kind of require a smelting expansion. The power armor and the fusion reactor and anything else that goes in the power armor is something that we haven't really touched on much at all, and I think that's it's a good time to do that. So we unlock the power armor. Next thing is the portable fusion reactor, which I'm going to start the research for, just so once these packs finally get flowing down that way, we should be able to hopefully crank that out. Now we will need a fair bit of processing units for this power armor, and I'm tempted, or for the fusion reactor, sorry. I'm tempted to just try to collect these somewhere. I think I'm gonna just extend this out, maybe just let them flow here, and then I can pick it up. I'm sorry if I'm taking kind of longer pauses and seem a little lost. I just moved some really heavy stuff around and started recording, I guess, before I was ready. Trying to catch my breath here, but let's look at the armor. So we want to make a power armor. Now we did make a modular armor, and the modular armor does have an equipment grid like the power armor. Now the equipment grid is a new thing which we will cover right now, and the modular armor is the first armor that does have that. The heavy armor and then of course the light armor do not. So this will show you the resistances when you mouse over them. Each armor has higher levels of resistances. Now way back in the day, the armors used to have durability, so once they took a certain amount of damage and such like that, they would actually break and you'd have to remake them. Seems like a very long time ago, but that was quite frustrating. That's no longer the case, so your armor will never die. It does have resistances, though, to, of course, block more damage. Now, you can see down there, it says equipment grid size 5x5, and acceptable equipment is all those things listed down there. And then the power armor says the same thing, except it's a 7x7 grid size. And one other thing to touch on is these armors, starting again at the modular armor, each one increases your inventory size. You can see there right above the equipment grid thing is the inventory size bonus is 10, so 10 slots. And then the power armor is a bonus of 20 slots, so we will get 10 more in addition. And then there is actually a power armor Mark II after this one. That has a 10x10 grid and I think 30 slots or 40, or maybe it's just 20. I don't actually entirely remember. Why don't we look at that here really quick? Fresh my memory. It's 30. Okay. So how do you access this equipment grid and how does it work? Well, if you take an armor, it can be in your inventory or equipped here. Usually you'll be doing this while it's equipped. And you right click it. So just right click it here. Now be careful. Be careful not to left click. I've made this mistake many times. It's very easy to make this mistake because if you left click, it picks up the armor and takes it out of your equipment slot. And what's going to happen with these these modular armors and upwards is once you take it off, you lose that inventory space. So if I take it off, you can see here cannot insert radar. It dropped the radar. Now, of course, it was only the one radar because that was only here. But you can imagine, especially with the power armor, if you had all your slots filled with stuff, which some of you may not have this problem. I seem to have a tendency to have my inventory full of needless things, something I'm constantly bothered with. Then it will eject basically any items that are in those slots that you no longer have since you took the armor off. So be careful not to left click it. But when you right click it, it opens up this grid here, and again it gives you resistances, all this, and this is where you can put these power armor modules. So if we go into combat, this is where they will be located. There's none so far because we've actually not unlocked them, but we can queue these up after the portable fusion reactor. There's quite a few here. There's exoskeleton, which is actually after portable solar panel, uh, which requires solar panels, of course. So a little bit behind there, but so portable solar panels are the power source that would come before a fusion reactor. Now, I've completely skipped these because I personally find these to be very, very lackluster. Now, there are people who will probably disagree with me. In very large numbers, these can be fairly decent. And by large numbers, I mean like 10 plus, like 15, 20 of these in your armor. And like, they're kind of expensive for that, for what they do. They only give you 30 kilowatts, which is half of what a normal solar panel gives you, which was not a lot to begin with. So typically I just skip these if possible, unless I just absolutely need like personal robots or something, before I get a fusion reactor. Again, we haven't touched on robots yet. We haven't needed them, so that's why I'm skipping this. It's just not very good in my opinion. It's the earliest form of power. It's not supposed to be great, but to me, it's not even worth investing the resources to build, because once you make them and then get a fusion reactor, these aren't used for anything else. That's really one of the main things. Is these just become complete, pretty much just throwaways, garbage. Once you get a fusion reactor, you don't need these. If you have like one slot sections in your power grid, or sorry, in your armor grid, you can just stick these in for that little extra power, which is great. But if you don't have those slots available, then these just become useless. So after this, we can now unlock all the other things. One of them being exoskeletons. So exoskeletons are very cool. What they do is they increase your movement speed. They go in your armor and increase your movement speed by 30%. And another cool thing about this, which I think quite a few people actually aren't aware of, is they stack. And we'll cover that in a second. Batteries, basically like accumulators, they just store the energy from your portable fusion reactor or solar panels. And there's some energy shields we don't need quite yet. I do want personal Robo Ports though, so we're just queuing up a bunch of research here. Probably should have done those before the fusion reactor, but that's okay. So the exoskeleton stack. I'm looking for electric engines here. The exoskeleton stack, meaning the more you put in your armor, you gain even more. The bonuses stack. So if you put 2, you get a 60% movement speed bonus, right? 30 times 2. If you put 3, you're 90% speed bonus, etc., etc. So once you get quite a few of those in there, you start moving at a pretty quick pace. And I think it doesn't really indicate that they can stack. It doesn't specifically say they cannot, but it doesn't really say that they can. So I think a lot of players don't actually realize that. I've seen quite a few questions come up and comments come through of people saying they had no idea they could stack. So hopefully that helps you in that regard, figuring that out, that they do in fact stack. Now I'm coming up here because I want to take a look at our copper that is looking fairly thin, even just at the beginning here, right? It circuits, it's dwindling, and this seems to be due to a lack of mining now. This patch is almost entirely tapped. And I didn't really show you much more with the grid just because we have nothing to put in it yet. Once we put things in there, I'll be able to show you more extensively. But essentially, you take those items that I just went over, and you just stick them into this grid. This is 7 by 7. And each one of those things has a certain size. So like an exoskeleton is 2 by 4. So if we put an exoskeleton, it's going to take up this section here. I believe that's 2 by 4, or is it 3 by 4? It's 2 by 4. And then, the batteries are 1 by 2, so they would take up like 2 squares here. The fusion reactor is quite large. I want to say it's like 4 by 4. So you can just fit whatever you want in here as long as it fits. You can rearrange them as well to create, almost like Tetris, to just kind of optimize the room if possible. And then it's really nice because it can give you movement speed, it can give you shields, it can give you personal robots, which are absolutely fantastic, and we'll get more into in the fairly near future here. And then you can even get actual combat things, so shields, like I said, but also let me see, how do I want to merge this? Also, you can get personal laser defenses, which are They're pretty cool. They're like laser turrets that go in your armor, which are actually really quite powerful. So, uh, there's all kind of stuff you can do. It's just a really, really nice late game thing. And then, of course, the infamous Spidertron they just added in 1.0 also has an equipment grid, which you can put all that same stuff in. Now, normal vehicles do not. There are multiple mods that do add equipment grids to normal vehicles, but Spidertron is the only vehicle in vanilla now that actually has an equipment grid, which is pretty neat. Up until they added that here just recently 1.0, it was only your armors that had an equipment grid, and it looks like our power is almost ready to struggle. So I'm gonna go ahead and make a few more engines here. It looks like we've actually already preset this up, which is fantastic. With this coal train coming in, we don't really have to worry too much about, over expanding and then adding too much power here, because we have more coal than we'll need for quite a long time. Portable fusion reactor is nearly done, actually going quite a lot faster than I thought. Part of that, I think, is just due to the fact we had those high-tech science packs built up. And that is what we're waiting on at the moment. It would actually be complete at this point, I imagine, if we did have those science packs, more of them. I think now it's kind of just consuming them as they're made. So let's just pick some stuff up here, make sure we have everything we need. Some more belt would probably be smart here. And once we get that, then hopefully we can knock out the other researchers fairly quickly. Just investigating our base here, I want to make sure there's no major bottlenecks. And this is something, this is something that I think is good to do every once in a while. Some of it is obvious, like the copper that we saw. But just looking at things that may not be as obvious. With liquids, liquids are a bit harder to detect. This is why I do like putting at least one tank here on each type of liquid, because you can just look at it, and this is a fairly decent indicator of how they're doing. If you don't put any tanks, it can be really a fair bit more difficult to actually find a problem or see if there's even a problem to begin with. And then on top of that, do we not have... Okay, didn't pick any of these up. On top of that, the tanks work as a great storage. Now, something I do want to touch on, I don't think I did mention this when I was setting up the oil. And I think this is maybe more of a personal thing, but I want to throw it out there anyway. I am not an advocate of putting a lot of tanks. 1, 2, maybe 3. 2 is usually my max per resource. I see a lot of times, I see people, especially newer players, and again, this is not, like, I did the same thing when I was new, and then I started realizing what I see as an issue, is I see people placing just fields, like literal fields of tanks, 10 plus 20 tanks for every resource. And now, while that is a good storage, it does suffer from the same buffer problem that we were discussing when we were setting up the smelters in earlier episodes, if you recall, or what at least I perceive as a problem. And then on top of that, which is a problem purely for liquids and not solids, what I'm about to say, is the tanks, because of how liquids work in the game, and that is a whole other monster in and of itself, one that is a bit too much to go into, really, I think. But the way liquids work is, what ends up happening is, and this will happen even with one tank, but it's very minimal, is even if you have full drain on it, so like if I had enough consumption of lubricant to actually be using, more lubricant than we're producing, what's going to end up happening is there's going to be a little bit of lubricant. This is, for this example, but this is true for all liquids, that just sits in the bottom of the tank, essentially. So if we're consuming, say, for example, 1,000 lubricant a minute, and we only produce 800 lubricant a minute, theoretically, you would think that it would just always be empty, right? We're consuming, or if we could, we would ideally be consuming more than we're producing. But what happens is, just because of the way fluids and tanks work in the game, there's going to be a bit that just always sits in here. Like, even if you have full draw on it, technically, really do need every little drop you can get, there's going to be some that sit in here. And in one tank, maybe 30 lubricant, 100 lubricant. But when you start putting 10, 20 tanks together, you're literally losing out on thousands of units of liquid that are all just sitting in the bottom of these tanks, which in some cases you just can't get out. Now, putting pumps like at the end of them, putting pumps, pumping out certainly helps. It does help. But even then, when you get these huge lines and fields of tanks, even having pumps doesn't actually really help that much, just because it can't pump. It can't pump from all the tanks. It'll maybe help drain the like first one or two from where the pumps is placed, but then the ones all the way back from that still have the issue. You could of course place pumps in between all of them, but that becomes a bit awkward. So again, this is my opinion. This is my personal experience. If you maybe have a solution to that issue that I'm not aware of, then that's awesome. That's definitely great. And even if you just don't care and you like playing that way, that is totally fine too. Like I said before, many times and multiple times in the series, I do not want to be someone who tells you how to play. I'm specifically like says that you absolutely have to play this way, and if you don't, you're wrong. I don't believe in that. I just want to share my opinion, and maybe it will help you realize some things one way or the other. And maybe it will help you realize something could be done a little better, or maybe it will help you realize that I'm actually wrong and there's a solution I'm not aware of, which is more than possible. Or maybe you just don't care and want to play that way, and if that's what you find fun, then that is fantastic. That's awesome. So I just want to throw that out there. So during that bit of a rant there, I expanded circuits. Now, of course, we do not have the iron to necessarily support this. In this is what exactly is happening here. Okay. So this is I put wood in here, and this is what I mentioned at one point where inserters can get stuck. If you recall, I had manually put wood in here to get rid of some wood, and these inserters then grabbed coal, like probably as I was putting the wood in, and you can't put two fuels in at once. So what happens then is it can't put the coal in here because there's wood, and they can't just drop this. So these are now not working because these are stuck and can't drop the coal to pick up the iron. So we now have to clear this, and now it'll work, and then once it runs out of wood, it'll pick up coal. The issue was that it just had a full inventory of wood for its fuel source, and then it tried to put in coal. But now that it's reset, it knows, okay, there is fuel in here, I don't need to put in coal. Once this does run out of wood, it theoretically should work, and this should give us a full line. As you can see, we have a 100% completely compressed full line out right here. So that's pretty great. And we just finished some stuff here, so let's actually work a little bit on our power armor. We can make an exoskeleton, so let's get working on that. Again, we're not going to use these portable solar panels. We are, however, going to use fusion reactors. Personal batteries we will be making here shortly. Once we unlock those, you can see how quickly we're blazing through this research. And let me just run down here. I don't know that we have enough blue circuits, unfortunately, to make this fusion reactor. We're going to make 2 batteries. It looks like there's very, very few processing units. We need, I believe, 200, and we certainly do not have that amount. We have half of that amount. And then these, of course, are not working because we don't have any copper. So it will be a little bit, unfortunately, before we can get that. But if we take a look here, we right-click again to open this. You can kind of see about what this is looking like. So I'm going to, my fusion reactor is 4x4, as I said. So I like just putting it, just my brain orients best when it's in this top left corner. You can put it wherever you like. it's going to take up this area right here. So knowing that, I'm going to stick my exoskeleton right here. And then I'm going to stick these batteries right here. So this is going to be the fusion reactor. Then we're left with this 3x7 space underneath it to put other things. Unfortunately, we cannot fit another exoskeleton because it's 4 tall and you can't turn them. But this is a pretty decent space for things like personal Robo Ports or shields, perhaps, if we want to go that route. Or even personal laser defenses. All these, the shields and the personal Robo Ports and the lasers, are all 2x2 dimension. So they all kind of fit within the same area. And mostly we're going to be looking for right now is the Robo Ports, because that's going to enable us to build much quicker in general, but particularly with rails. I really want to get a proper rail setup going, and in having robots for that will be very important. Okay, so I don't know if you can really notice, but I'm going to move this. You can just click in this area and drag it. If I do this, it's not super noticeable, but it's a little noticeable. With one exoskeleton, it's not super noticeable, but this does give me a slight run speed increase. You really start to notice once you get like 2 or more in there, a pretty big difference. Now, this could be expanded. I think that's what we're going to do right this minute, is we're going to go ahead and expand this. Do I have poison capsules? So, along with destroying worms, poison capsules are fantastic for clearing trees. And there we go. Now they won't damage buildings. However, they will fairly heavily damage me. So I'm gonna just give it a minute there to dissipate. As you can see, though, it does not damage buildings. So what I'm gonna do here, I'm actually I'm not placing the furnace here yet, and the reason for that is because I want this to still run while I continue setting this up rather than cutting this line. So if we take a look at the length of this, this is 18. Now, I am noticing we get this full line of iron out. We were, anyway, with only 22 furnaces. Now, the ratio used to be 24 per side, and this potentially changed at some point. Maybe when they changed, they, not too long ago, well, a little while ago, changed the crafting speed of this, and I thought that they changed the movement speed of belts. I thought that that they made it so the ratio didn't change, but perhaps it did. We'll have to watch that. I'm pretty sure, I could have sworn they said ratios didn't change, but we have 18 here. If we just assume we're going to go to 22, we need 4 more, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. We could pick these up, I suppose, for now. And again, same thing on this side. Extend this out. Extend this out. I'm just going to try to get everything possible set up here. So this guy is actually going to go like that. And then like so. And then, yeah, we can probably just come down here. And instead of, I could have just made it very easy on myself and just quickly turned it back here, but then that's just going to block any future expansion. At least this way, it's already brought out to the point where, you know, our expansion out 22 furnaces on all the smelters are not going to hit this. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm putting a splitter there when I'm going to cut this line, and that is just so that what is left on this line can drain into there, drain into the bus. Okay, so here we go. And provided we had enough copper ore, this should theoretically that should theoretically give us a full belt. Okay. We do have all this stone we could go place somewhere. Now, copper is looking decent. Iron is, of course, lacking. I don't think... we could fit a few more miners with a little bit of rearrangement there. We are having still copper troubles. It looks good here. It is supplying the circuits. Every time we split off, though, it is, of course, dwindling all the way until we have nearly no copper whatsoever here. Now, this will, of course, fix itself once everything before this backs up. So, eventually this problem will fix itself. We did unlock these shields, which we can actually make a fair few of. So, if we go ahead and make, let's say, 2 of these for now, we can put these in our armor. Now, this is going to leave us with a little bit of extra space. A 7x7 size is a fair bit awkward. You know, this would be an example where just filling this with solar panels would be quite good, because it's just unusable space basically, and your, you know, that extra power from the solar panels could be pretty decent. Now there is belt immunity equipment, which is a 1x1, and basically what this does is this prevents belts from moving the character, which could be useful. So why don't we grab that, as well as a tool belt. This increases our character inventory slots by 10, which is quite nice. I'm going to make a few of these. Now, I do have to hand make these solar panels, which is somewhat annoying, but we have these shields in here now. We have room for another thing, and then 2 more spaces. It really is a bit of an awkward size. Probably what I'll end up doing here is getting rid of a shield and putting in another Robo Port. So there we go. And then so this expanded this out because this is now giving us more statistics like shield capacity, solar panel power, Robo Ports, max robots, etc., etc. You can see this is now increasing. This will slowly, very slowly charge things. You can see this is our shield bar here. This is now charging our shields. These shields are 50 hit points worth each, so a total of 100 between the two. Of course, when you get shot, they will absorb that amount of damage, and then they will recharge after a little while. There's a little bit of a cooldown, and then you know, then we'll start charging things like our Robo Port and our batteries. So robots are something we've not really touched on that much here. And I think that's really like a whole episode or 2 on its own, really. Now, these things all do show their power consumption, too. So we have 120 kilowatts worth of power. Each one of these, as you can see, this is why I don't like these. We have 4, and they can't really power anything fully. You know, this takes max consumption is 240 kilowatts. That's already double. This is 200 kilowatts, you know, already like 1.5 times. It's just a lot. But we are making circuits. Copper is slowly, you can see there is a bit more copper now making it down that way. We do have this. So, okay, so that's quite interesting. I'm quite curious what's happening here, because the iron certainly was a full belt. Now, it could be that it was backed up before that. I wasn't actually really paying attention. It could have been backed up before that, which was what was causing this to be a full belt, because you'll notice this is actually not. All of these furnaces are working, and there are gaps, which would say to me that having, say, for example, 2 additional furnaces, to be 24 per side, would indeed give us a full belt. So I am starting to think that the iron, I just did not pay attention, and the iron belt was only full because it was potentially backed up on the bus. I'm very much sure, in fact, that that's what happened. So even though we just ran this, this is now the correct length. We should not really need to be moving this again, and we now know that this belt is in a place that should not interfere with the expansion of all these. If we just Control-C to measure this, is a very, again, the copy-paste tool. Control-C is a very nice way to easily measure things. Tool belt has finished. Gave us even more inventory room, which is fantastic. Only 1 research for that. Now, robots, I don't even think we've unlocked robots yet. We did unlock combat and construction. Okay. I'm gonna hold off on research here momentarily, just so we can get resources flowing down to, you know, low density structures and the blue circuits here to get the fusion reactor. You notice we're getting some alerts here now. You know, this is now missing. This is missing construction bots. This is because I have my personal Robo Port. So it's saying, hey, there's ghosts, which is what robots would normally place, and there's no robots to place it. So that's what that warning is telling us right there. Now what I'm going to do, that can build up there. I am going to, I think, as a very temporary measure, it takes 50. I'm going to cut this belt. Now the problem with this is if you forget, you're going to end up with no science and not remember why. But I'm doing this simply to build up the 50 low density structures I need to make my fusion reactor. Because this is a big step. The fusion reactor is 750 kilowatts of power generation compared to the 120 we're getting from 4 solar panels. So this is a massive, massive increase in power. And of course we will leave the solar panels in here in this armor just because, you know, this space is pretty much useless otherwise in this 7x7 grid here. The Power Armor Mark II, of course, is, you know, step up. It's a 10x10 grid, which is easier to utilize and just better in general. So we're going to extend these lines. Now, I know we didn't get a ton of building done, but I did show off the Power Armor, which hopefully was helpful to you. It may not be entirely intuitive. I mean, it does say there, but there's just so much information in the game. You know, I think it can be fairly easily missed how to open it and how to, you know, put your modules into it and interact with it and stuff. Like I said, just be very careful not to left click. It'll probably happen because it's just easy to make that mistake. But it's it'll create a bit of a problem. Yeah, you'll have a bit of a spill. So extending these lines just because I'm pretty sure we're going to need most of this stuff down here. Now, of course, by doing this, I am having things produce even more just because they're having to then fill that newly placed belt, which of course is then limiting what we can actually build here. But this is now a fully saturated belt, which is fantastic. I think it's perhaps a last thing to do here. While that kind of works to build those things up, we'll probably get our fusion reactor next episode. I'm going to go ahead and build, I'm going to go ahead and get some more miners. And we're going to just completely fill, if we can, the iron patch. It may require a little bit of belt rearranging, but filling that I think will be quite good. Because you can see there, those last two furnaces are not working simply due to a lack of iron. And the copper does not have that problem. In fact, this is not even fully extended. This is only 2 furnaces each. So, with that in mind, you can see these guys have now been exhausted. Used up all the resources they had available to them. And I think what we're going to do at this point... okay, what we're going to do is we're going to take this... Get rid of that. This is no longer needed there. Keep thinking this can be a little annoying, some of these alerts. You know, it kind of makes me think that maybe we're under attack. Just at first glance. You know, until I really see what the alert is. But I'm truly going to utilize every bit of iron here. Just because we do need it until we can go find some more. So we're just going to do it simple. Now, there is a lot of, you know, merging with splitters and stuff going on here. This is obviously not the cleanest. Once you start getting into these, like, weird little sections of your patches, it is hard, in my opinion, to make very clean setups. Just because, you know, you have to place miners in kind of awkward places sometimes. You know, maybe a few here, a few there. And, just because patches aren't perfectly square, of course, you know, makes it a bit harder than normal. We're gonna pick this up and let's see. So this does have some coal in it, unfortunately. I really don't want to filter that out. It's kind of a pain to filter it out because while you can do a filter splitter, you have to send that coal somewhere. And I mean, sure, we have a coal line right here, but then you enter the problem area of what if the coal line backs up? Then the coal you're filtering off obviously cannot go anywhere, which then, you know, results in everything, your iron line backing up because it can't filter out the coal, etc., etc. Now, you could put it in boxes, of course, and that may be what we end up doing. I do want to take a quick look here. I'm going to just do something a little bit silly like that. I do want to take a look and see how far this amount of mining gets us here. Now, again, this is a bit awkward in the fact that we have to run these belts in very odd directions and orientations here. But I think probably we can make this work. It will be, like I said, slightly messy. Do, of course, need to power those through there at the end. And there we go. So this is what what would be kind of getting in towards what people may refer to as spaghetti. Looks like we maybe dropped a plate of spaghetti here on our factory. We'll do that. So this is something, this is worth noting. This thing I just did right here, this is something you can actually utilize in your mining line here, output line, to fully pack a patch. Now, because you'll notice, I leave this space between them to put power poles. And since the miners do have a 5x5 coverage area, even though the miner entity itself is only 3x3, they have a coverage area of 5x5. You can see that green highlighted area. Even though they have, so they do have that, which does mean that they're mining in this section that I leave open. But obviously that's a space for every line of miners that can't be actually, you know, covered in the miner itself, meaning that that's less miners we can put on a patch. So what you can do is very much like I just did here. You can do like this type of thing and then put the power pools in here, because they will mine onto an underground belt just as inserters will place onto it and pull from it. And that allows you to then put the miners completely back to back without this space here, which does, especially on bigger patches, does allow you to just completely fill the patch and get maybe an entire row, possibly even two if the patch is very big, and you're saving a lot of space. Entire extra row or two maybe onto the patch, which can make a bit of a difference, as you might imagine. You know, imagine if we could get a whole nother row like this. This patch, at least at this point, that's not really applicable just because it's small, especially now. It was bigger. So that's just something to, you know, keep in mind there, that is an option if you want to do it that way. And voila, these smelters are now all working. Now, of course, going to add the 2 additional here to make a total of 24, and I somewhat get the feeling, just due to the bit of a wonkiness of how our iron ore is coming through, that this may not actually work fully, but certainly worth adding anyway, just to get that proper length. As you can see, there were those spaces there because we were missing a couple. Copper is looking significantly healthier, at least all the way up to this point. The red circuits are still consuming it fairly heavily. That will stop soon as this is getting backed up. A little bit's making it here. We maybe do have our 50 low density structures, in which case I can then turn this back on to go to the science. Let's pick this up. And one thing to touch on before we end the episode here, I do 10, 20, 30. I think pretty sure that's 50. One thing you'll notice is not everything stacks the same. I haven't mentioned this before because it was pretty obvious. So most things stacked just in a general same amount, you know, like most actual item, like factory items stacked in 50s, except for belts, of course. Most ores and stuff stacked in 50s, most plates stacked in 100s. Low density structures, in fact, all parts that go to the rocket, low density structures, and then the other two, which I haven't touched on yet, all stack in 10s. So this is something to keep in mind, that if you plan to pick up a bunch of these, it will take a lot of inventory room because they do only stack in 10s. So that is something to definitely bear in mind. Let's go ahead and grab this. Do we have enough? Oh, we nearly have enough. We need 16 more. Oh my goodness, I don't know if we're gonna be able to get it. This episode, I think, already feels quite long. Oh, we have a runaway. Oh, there's some down here. Perfect. Because this was not on since we're not low densities. Okay, let's make this and then put it in, and we'll call it an episode. As you can see, we have 2% battery power because it spent the entire time charging this. The solar panels are just not very good. However, once we stick this thing in, this 750 kilowatt generator, look how quickly this is going up. 1% a second, or possibly even faster than that. So this is just so much better, and we have it. So our power armor is now filled out here. You know, potentially maybe why we didn't notice a speed increase is because the solar panels weren't actually enough to power it. So, oh yeah, now we notice. There we go. See, look at the speed increase. And that's just with one. So imagine if you put like 3 or 4 of those in, which you can certainly do with the Mark II power armor. First one's a little harder to do that with. But our power armor is all set up. We have a Robo Port. We're going to make another one. I'll probably make that off camera. And make some robots, since we do have the robot frames. Probably take out a shield to stick that other Robo Port in. And then I can start introducing you to robots, and we can start building a proper rail network and getting some outposts and progressing very much into the late game. I would say this is the point. Once you get yellow science done, in my opinion, that is definitely the start of late game. Yellow science could be argued to be the start. I think once you complete it, you're really kind of in the late game for sure. And there you go, guys. I hope you found this helpful and enjoyable, despite there being a lot of running around and not a ton of actual building. I think we still covered some decent topics, I hope. And if you did find it helpful, a like is much appreciated, since it does help other people find it, and hopefully you find it helpful and informative as well. If you're new to the game, I hope you're having a great time, as I have been here with the 1.0 release. And if you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe to keep up with all the new content that is coming out, of which there's quite a bit. And any thoughts and questions, do leave below, and I will do my best to answer. Until next time, I look forward to seeing you all, and do take care.